Most bankers aren't ready to help you until after their third cup of coffee. But with Central National Bank's after-hours service, you don't have to wait for the bank lobby to open to get help. You can contact us from 6 to 8:30 in the morning or from 5 to 10 in the evening, and we'll connect you to a real, live, local person who can answer questions and fix problems 7 days a week. Bank different. Bank Central. Central National Bank. Member FDIC.
This is a Rogue Media Network podcast.
Watch us fight all through the night, deep in the heart of Texas. The trailer park is nice and dark, deep in the heart of Texas. That drinks his brew and he spits his chew, deep in the heart of Texas. The TV blares, but no one cares, deep in the heart of Texas. Here we go!
Hey, everybody. Welcome to
Bois.
King of the Hill podcast. I'm Mike.
And I'm Rusty.
Rusty, welcome to That Ain't Right Friday.
It ain't right.
We're starting a new thing here. This is, we've come up with a name for it. It is Mason's first annual Bois Tournament of Cartoon Champions. So we're going to take 2, 3, 4 episodes, and we're going to compare shows. So
Yeah, compare shows, compare like neighborhoods.
Think of this as a bracket, like your March Madness or whatever, but this is a bracket for cartoon shows.
Yeah.
So I think we're going to start off big here. We're going to compare King of the Hill to Family Guy.
Yeah,
Now-
and the way it was going to
Yeah, go for it.
The way I was thinking of structure, we start with just main character,
Yeah.
then supporting cast,
Okay.
just also running gags, and just you know,
These are the rules, folks. We have to go by them. Robert's these are Mason's rules of order.
also who not necessarily whether or not you laugh more, but just which has better story structure per episode.
Sure. Okay. All right. So we'll start off with Family Guy versus King of the Hill.
All right.
So, Mason, you want to give us kind of the lowdown on those 3 or 4 things you just laid out?
So let's go with main character first. I don't know. How do you guys compare Hank Hill to Peter Griffin? Like, who do you generally like? And not necessarily who's a better human being or who's more fun to watch.
Sure.
Like, who's funnier? Like, who do you enjoy?
Well, I can tell you straight up. I mean, it's Hank. Hank for me is always a better character. Peter Griffin's just an idiot. He's a big fat idiot, and
Big,
so
fat,
that's his
dum-dum.
whole thing. What about you?
I don't know. I'm really not a big fan of Family Guy, really, honestly.
I was to begin with.
Well, to begin with, I was. My favorite anecdote about that show was me and my friend were watching it. We're probably like 12 or 13, and we're sitting at his grandparents' house, and his grandparents, big nappers, at lunchtime, being some old folks after church.
For some reason, I thought you were saying big nappies, like they got giant diapers.
No.
That's the first. I've been watching a lot of British comedy.
Oh,
here
I got
lately,
you.
so
Yeah.
that's the
Nappy is a
first thing.
diaper. Yeah. So during their nap time, we were watching King of the Hill on television, or some reruns of King of the Hill.
Yeah.
And it was still on the TV when his grandpa came up out of his nap and came to sit down on the chair in his chair, and he's sitting there for like 2 or 3 minutes.
In his big nappy.
And his face just starts to turn, and he's like, "What is this crap? He's not a Family Guy." He said, "What kind of a Family Guy is he? This guy's not a Family Guy." And
Sure.
it just made me laugh every time I watch it. I'm like, "Yeah, Peter's just not a Family
Well,
Guy."
I can see an old guy, thinking that. I mean, because
And he's a deacon. He's an old deacon of a church.
Sure,
Reads his
sure.
Bible at after
Yeah.
lunch while he's sitting in his chair,
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
thing. Gets up from his nap, getting ready for his Bible study,
Bible
kind of thing.
things.
Yeah, doing Bible stuff. A lot of sitting in the chair, a lot of Bible, a lot of writing down notes.
Begatting.
Yeah, begotten, be shatting, be shotting. Yeah, whatever it is,
So,
But
I
that's
can-
my anecdote for it.
What happened? I can. Mason, you all right? Did you fall down?
No, I was just moving my mic.
Okay.
Pulled a Ford
so,
on us.
if anybody doesn't know, when Mason's in the control room and we're in the little studio here, so we often hear sounds and we don't know what they are, and I'm sure the same goes for him.
Yeah,
So,
I'm pretty
yeah,
sure.
because you hear this. That's me hitting my mic, and that sucks.
That hurt my ears.
Yeah, I'm sure it did. So, for you, Mason, what do you think about the two characters?
Well, I mean, Hank's obviously the better written one. This was an easy subject. It's gonna get a little,
Sure.
probably get a little harder, especially when we do other shows.
Yeah,
Family Guy's
absolutely.
just the easiest one. But I do think sometimes the things Peter says are a lot funnier than Hank's ever
Sure.
said. Like you can meme Peter a
Yeah.
lot easier.
Yeah.
I mean, I still love Rock Lobster. That's still hilarious to
Oh,
me.
sure. You know the
Um,
song, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Rock. No. Well, and, Family Guy, they have a rock lobster.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't a rock. It
Mm.
was a rock lobster.
Yeah.
B-52s.
But in terms of character, I do. This also goes into writing. I do like how Peter, he's not always called out, but Peter's often in the wrong.
Yeah.
And he's usually called out for it. Usually, like when it's good in an episode. But
Sure.
one thing that does kind of annoy me, especially in later seasons, is how Hank's always in the right. Like no
Mm,
matter where,
Yeah.
no matter what, he's always in the right.
That's true.
And I mean, sometimes, I mean, that's fine. I mean, Hank's a good guy, but sometimes I was like him to be wrong and like a human,
Yeah.
and be wrong and called out on it.
Yeah, I
you
see
know?
what you're saying, but that's the one thing that I like about King of the Hill over Family Guy is the tales of morality at the end of every episode.
Yeah,
Family
sure.
Guy just became a clip show. It just became like
Yeah.
a TikTok feed or
It's a
something
lot
like
of
that.
flashbacks. It's
Yeah,
a lot of
that's what it feels
characters,
like to
things
me
that,
is that Seth MacFarlane quickly understood that the audience that was coming up didn't have a very good attention span.
Yeah.
Because my dad watching a show like that, he gets annoyed with it because it's
Sure.
just. I mean, the jokes are funny and my dad laughs, but he can't watch 100 episodes of Family Guy. People our age, they can just run through. Like my sister could turn on Family Guy and watch it for the next 3 days straight and never be discontent. And for our generation, I feel like that's what it became all about. These quick clips, quick funny, quick joke. Instead of having a show that's built out and structured, it was more about cramming as many jokes as possible in 22 minutes that we could get in, minus commercial
it's even
time.
worse now. Well, it's gotten a little better now, but it's even worse for a long time.
I
where
would think Family
it
Guy
was
is a lot harder
like the
to
first-
write because of that.
it is also because they spend the first 10 minutes of the episodes on something unrelated, and they actually don't get to the main plot of the episode till after the first commercial break.
Do y'all know the opening to Family Guy? Do you know what that refers to? Like her sitting there playing the piano and everything?
Married with Children.
No,
No.
it's All in the Family. So it goes
Oh.
back to Archie Bunker, because they sit there and play.
I thought it was. I guess it's like a combination of the two then, because the song of it reminds me of like
does,
something
kinda
for
Married
like
with Children.
love
Yeah.
and marriage.
Yeah.
I don't
You
know.
know what's
I don't know. Maybe not.
insane?
What's that?
It's probably easier for you guys, but when I watch older episodes, like from the first 2 seasons,
Yeah.
and how a lot of the show is them sitting in front of the TV and
Sure.
their writers make fun of a show or something.
Right.
Half the time there's shows, and I was like, I have no idea. Like,
Oh, you
they
don't know
did
what
one.
the
They did
shows
one
are?
about the Brady Bunch, or one
Yeah.
about
yeah.
the Osmond, not the Osmond. I think the Osmond family
Yeah.
or something
Yeah,
like that.
well, Seth
Donnie
MacFarlane
and
is
Marie.
Seth MacFarlane is a kid from the 70s, so
Yeah.
a lot of his references are all like late 70s, early 80s television, mid 80s, all the way
Yeah,
through the
so
80s
a lot
television.
of those just go over my head.
A lot of them go over my head too. Honestly, there's not a lot of those television because I growing up in England.
Oh, Seth is 50 years old.
Yeah, Seth is 50, so yeah, definitely the 80s and stuff like that.
1973, same year as my wife.
Yeah, so he got all of that.
Same year the San Antonio Spurs started, too.
Yeah, it was
Good
the same year, good year. So he got all of that influence of the 70s and 80s TV. That's where a lot of his references and stuff come from, is from that era of television, those era of sitcoms and stuff like that. And he's a big
And
show
Broadway.
tunes guy too.
Yeah,
that's why
Broadway.
there's
And
so
that
many
has to do
musicals.
with his dad being from the era of
Oh,
show
sure.
tunes and
Yeah.
stuff like that,
Yeah,
and
definitely.
passing on that love to Seth
Well, that's the
MacFarlane.
stuff you hear in your house, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's what you grow up on,
Yeah.
so that's what you make fun of. Yeah.
I will say I do, and this is not really gonna have that much structure to it. I do think Family Guy
Like
has
any good
better
tournament, no
overall.
structure.
Yeah.
Family Guy has better music than King of the Hill,
Yeah.
in my opinion.
Yeah, you're
Because
right.
they only
about
have
that.
one musical-esque episode, the Bluegrass one. Other than that, it's just not really anything there. I do like when Family Guy does musicals.
I don't know, man. Satan
You know,
sucks.
Yeah.
the Bag of Weed song, that's great. There's a
That's
bunch
probably
of-
like one of the top 3 ones. That's such a good, because it's such a whole, like it lasts so long in that one episode, that song, that it is half of the episode, I think, like
Yeah.
that.
yeah. There's just, Now, what do you guys think of? I guess supporting cast is hard. I guess we can do this. Okay, let's start with friend groups,
Yeah.
and then we'll go to the kids and the wives and stuff.
So you've got Giggity, whatever his name is.
Quagmire,
Yeah.
and
Which is like-
Cleveland and Joe.
which
got
is
the
like
guy in
a
the wheelchair,
creepy
that's Joe.
Boomhauer.
Yeah.
And then you got Cleveland. So
One of whom, which is funny because one of whom left to do a spinoff and then came back when
Yeah.
the spinoff was canceled.
Yeah.
Which is
Do
kind of
they-
funny.
when
which
he
the
comes-
spinoff was canceled and it returned, so it was
Yeah.
King of the Hill. Very
so
contented.
when he comes
contented
back, do they reference
topic.
it?
Yeah, they reference it a
Okay.
lot.
All right.
For a
That's what I
while they
thought.
did.
Yeah.
Very
It's just
meanly
like-
too.
Well, it's just like the girl being replaced as the sister on Roseanne. And,
Yeah, well, that's a big point of
all that kind of
contention
stuff.
for us here at Bois is the Cleveland show canceling our show and our show not getting a proper send off due to the Cleveland show.
Well, I'm a little worried about the reboot because of replacing people also, because there's a lot of people you got to replace.
And
The one-
as time passes, you know, who knows?
Another awkward thing is how because Cleveland and I think his wife's name is Donna. They're still married, and they still have those kids. Just the kids almost never talk.
Yeah.
Because they just don't want to pay the actors.
Sure.
Which is hilarious.
Sure.
They're there. They just never say anything.
I'm sure the further they get into the show, which how long's it been on now?
It's been on over 20 years.
400
20
years.
years, yeah.
Yeah. The longer that show's on, I'm sure the more expensive it became, just like any other show. Look at The Simpsons and what those folks make at this point. So you do have to cut down on character voices, I would assume, because it's just going to cost
I mean,
you
not
money.
really when Seth voices half the damn cast.
Well, that's true, too. Yeah, you're right about that.
And Mila Kunis barely ever talks.
Oh, really?
Yeah, or Seth Green.
Anymore?
No, they're there, but if anything, they only get one line,
Yeah.
if that.
I'm
if they
sure.
even say
I'm
anything.
sure they're paid by the word or something.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
All right,
Then,
so supporting cast, I'm going to give that to
their
Hank.
friend group, better
Yeah.
friend group. Though Dale, they're funnier too.
So
Let's go to
who do you
wives.
compare Dale to?
Oh, Dale's comparable to
Mm.
you can't. I guess
There is no real big conspiracy theorist. Dale reminds me of
I think he'd be more
Joe,
Joe.
I
right?
guess.
well,
yeah.
if you want to call him Joe, but Dale reminds me more of Cleveland's redneck neighbor in the Cleveland show
Sure.
yeah.
than he does of anything else. If
do
I had to put him as a
appreciate
character, it'd be Dale.
how each of Hank's friends do get their own their own episodes
true.
from time to time.
It's true.
Yeah,
And their families too, not just them, because
Yeah.
the last episode was
Nancy.
really Nancy's
Yeah.
episode.
yeah. All in
Nancy
all,
and somebody who's not even in the family, John
Yeah.
Redcorn.
all in all, it boils down to intent.
No Joseph, though.
Yeah, no Joseph at all. There's no Joseph. Well, he might be Quagmire grown up.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, but the intent, I guess, of the writing is the difference in the shows. One show
Yeah.
is intent is to make you laugh nonstop,
Yeah.
and then the other show's intent is to make you look at your life in a comparison to a show and find those comparisons and find humor with inside of those real world connections. Whereas Family Guy is extremely nonsensical, where one person gets their arm cut off in an episode and the next episode their arm's back kind of
Sure.
thing. Whereas in
Continuity.
King of the Hill, they explore continuity. They may not be 100% with their continuity, as we've already
Sure.
picked out a couple of things that aren't, but they definitely stick with the majority of as much continuity as they can find and much as they can keep, because they too have writer changes and differences in writers, and they've went through strikes along the way of their
I
progression too.
blame the skips in continuity on the network.
And that's probably what it
Yeah.
is, probably network stuff.
It's usually
especially
things
when
that are bad with shows. It's network's fault.
Yeah, and especially and the main things with the continuity that we find is not just necessarily continuity.
It's nothing big. It's
in
like the
the
computer
show.
thing and
Yeah.
stuff like that.
And
Yeah.
that's not continuity in production.
No.
That's continuity in releasing
Yeah.
schedules.
That's why I say it. I'm
And
sure it's
network
the network
issue, yeah. Because some of those episodes that we looked back at the beginning of this one, where the Hillenium and the computer was like 3 episodes later before you saw the
Right,
computer again
right.
and stuff, is because if you look at the production numbers of all of those, they're in
They fall out of order.
They fall out of order if you go with the chronological order of the show. But if you go with the chronological order of production, those little continuity issues, you don't see them as much because that's the way that the writers intended for it to
Yeah.
flow and the animators intended it to flow. But
bet-
of course, production with the Hillenium episode and with stuff like that, it all gets shuffled around by network execs.
I bet the person who ran the show Bible that drove them insane. Because
which would probably be Mike. I imagine Mike probably did the show
you
Bible.
see these people with show Bibles and they are so in tune with continuity that when something happens, it's a huge thing. you
Oh,
know?
yeah, it's a huge thing.
But-
Working with F and stuff on our animation podcast, he showed me some show Bibles and stuff like that, and it's
love to see those.
insane. Well, he showed me one specifically on one of our episodes that we did about the Jungle Book thing that he was doing. So
Yeah.
Disney had approached him and said, "We want to do a Ren and Stimpy-esque ish kind
Such a
of
bad
and not in the vein of like potty humor like Ren and Stimpy,
Yeah.
but in the vein of irreverent comedy for children.
Sure.
Because that's what, of course, Ren and Stimpy started out as, is irreverent comedy.
But they
for
were
children.
doing it with what? Baloo and who else?
Baloo and Mowgli is who
Oh,
they were going to
okay.
do it with. It was going to be
Got
the
it.
bear and Mowgli.
Yeah.
And actually, you can go check that episode out. Animation Conversation, anywhere you get podcasts,
Shameless plug.
YouTube preferably. But yeah, so that whole episode, he just kind of talks about how this show could have been, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then the whole he goes over the show Bible, saying, "Well, we could have done this and could have done this." And I just can't just imagine how many shows out there that are like that never really get produced.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And, okay, so Mason, you said next one is wives.
Yeah.
Oh, why?
So
Lois
Lois,
and Peggy.
versus Peggy.
Lois is the better wife.
Are you sure about that, Rusty?
I think Lois is the better wife for sure because her husband puts her through infinitely more bull
That's true.
than Hank
Yeah.
puts his wife through. If anything with Hank, it's his wife putting him in awkward and weird
She does.
situations with her overinflated ego or
Yep.
whatever you want to call it. And with Lois, it's a give and take. There's more give and take in their relationship, I feel like.
Well,
than
that
there is in
last
Hank's.
episode of
Peggy's.
ours, he could have read anything for the filibuster, but she's got 2 years worth of musings in her.
So he
purse,
read her
So
musings.
he has to read the musings and
Yeah.
be embarrassed by
I
it.
feel like as a husband, he is way more supportive of Peggy than Peggy is of him.
Oh.
Whereas in Lois
Yes.
and Peter's relationship, I feel like they have more. I hate to say it like this, but I think they have more equity and equality in their relationship than Hank and Peggy do.
Well,
It varies by episode.
yeah,
it
it
is
does vary by episode, but when you see,
But as an average,
even when you see Hank ultimately get hit on by somebody, he just doesn't know what to do because
No, he
he's
don't.
so into that relationship that he's just
he
like,
doesn't
okay,
even
that
think
part's
about
over.
the possibility.
Yeah.
He doesn't even think about the possibility of being sought by somebody.
No. So yeah, I think Lois is better.
I mean,
as-
to be fair, Peggy never slept with Bill Clinton.
That's true. But I think Lois ultimately is the better sane one for the most part. But Peggy is stronger. I think she's a stronger character
She's a much better character. Yeah.
because Lois does seem like she gets put on the back burner a lot.
She does. She doesn't. And that's what I like about King of the Hill is generally these main characters, they have equity screen time. They
Yeah.
all have an equitable time on screen.
Sure.
They all have an equitable purpose. And that's what I kind of like it. You get invested in them is because they create equity in the characters. And I feel like that King of the Hill does that better than a lot of these irreverent comedy shows, whereas, like The Simpsons and Family Guy, Cleveland Show, American Dad, I feel like they spend a lot of time, way far off into the irreverent comedy stuff, and a lot of the story stuff kind of gets pushed to the wayside because they're too busy, like I said, with jokes. And there's nothing wrong with that, and a lot of people enjoy that. Otherwise, they still wouldn't be on TV after 30-plus years of King of the Hill and 20-plus years of Family Guy.
Yeah. I just
yeah.
think you're building a ship that's going to fall apart at some point when it's all jokes.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we've seen in Family Guy, that over the years, it's really kind of fallen apart.
It has. And nowadays with TV ratings, I imagine the TV
Means
ratings
nothing.
don't really support the shows anymore.
Yeah.
But the fact that they're just revenue machines, that
Well,
they just continue to generate money. That
Nielsen
they're on
just
TV.
now is starting to come around to electronically collect.
Yeah, they're going to
results.
have to they're going to have to be some kind of metric measurement for this stuff. Otherwise, how are we going to, how are networks going to gauge whether this is going to be something that they keep on TV? And I think they're harder on shows nowadays than they ever have been, because you'll have something on Netflix that'll just be a phenomenal first season of something with a
They get
great
canceled.
critical critics were rave about it and stuff like that. But the fact that not enough people watched it.
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of good shows are getting killed like that just based off of simple ratings and stuff. Whereas the appreciation of a cult following is lost.
It's also about if you can't just start it. They care more about if you start it and actually finish the whole season,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
they care more about if you've binged the whole thing within 2
Mhm,
days, or because you can't, with them for some reason you can't just start it, wait a week, or wait like 3 months and then you finish it.
Yeah.
You have to do it within like that opening weekend, otherwise I just
Well,
realize
that's why like Disney and people like that drop them one at a time, because if it really gets critical panning, then they can cancel it just like a regular network.
Yeah.
Whereas Netflix, they pay for the whole thing. at
Well, they
once.
have, I'll give Netflix their
well, I
flowers
wouldn't
on
necessarily
certain
say it's
things.
just the panning. I think it's more because this got off topic, but I think
There
it's
you go.
more just to keep word of mouth going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they did
and
do
interest.
some
'Cause, like
good for
last
the
Stranger
world.
Things. I mean, as much as I like Stranger Things, people stopped caring after like 2 weeks.
Sure.
Yeah. And they did do some good in the world, too. And even Hulu, they brought back shows that otherwise would have died. Trailer Park Boys, Letterkenny, both of those
Yeah.
are really good franchises that just didn't have the networks that thought they were going to do good. And you know what? Who benefited from that? The streaming services. Letterkenny did amazing on Hulu. They brought it back. They did so much stuff for it. They did so many mini stuff
I
and
have a hard-
animations.
I have such a hard time with Canadian comedy.
That is the only two shows out of any Canadian comedy
Yeah.
that I've been able to watch, and it's because it's relatable to Texas. The whole trailer park
Sure, I
thing
get
is
it,
relatable
yeah.
to Texas, and then the whole like country redneck
Backwoods,
thing,
yeah.
the Letterkenny thing, the
Yeah.
terminology and the language I had to learn. The tarps
Sure.
off, boys. Let's
Sure.
smoke a dart. You had to
Yeah.
learn all that stuff, but once you have the lingo for that,
Yeah.
it's just as funny to me as watching King of the Hill and seeing all these Texas things.
I'm going to say something that might isolate us, but I always think of Canadian television shows as like American Light. Like it's almost an American show.
Yeah,
They want to be
yeah.
American so badly.
And I think that's what I like about those two shows is there is a lot of juxtaposition in American culture and the Canadian culture in those shows.
Oh, sure.
Like
But when you think
the
about
poor guy eating a stick of pepperoni and a bag of chips, that's like eating a Slim Jim and a bag of chips in the trailer park kind of thing, or smoking a joint in the trailer park. Hash coins is currency. What I mean? It's just real good writing. I
I
think
will tell you that SCTV is one of my all-time favorite shows. And,
that's a
and
great one. Yeah, it's good
SCTV
stuff.
was all Canadian. I mean, it all came out of Canada.
Yeah, I've been
But when
going
you've got
back and
Martin
watching some of that.
Short and people like that, I mean, it's hard to fail.
Yeah, it's really, really hard to fail. Not that there is some funny stuff in it, and it's just like with British TV too. British TV feels the same. Like when I've been
Sure.
over to England and watched their TV and sat down my end, I'm like, this is like Law and Order SVU, but with British accents and
Yeah.
like bad camera work and bad lighting and stuff. Like I don't know if the production values are different or whatever in like some of these TV programs, and I imagine some of the budgets are probably different, but. I don't know. It just doesn't seem it just like you said. It seems like TV light.
It does seem TV light. Right now, I'm watching a show called Back, BACK,
Yeah, I've never
and
heard
it
that one.
stars David Mitchell, who was
Okay.
in the Peep Show.
Yeah,
and
yeah, I
some
know
other
what you're talking
stuff.
about. Yeah,
It's very dry. It's very
Yeah.
very English. But
I actually
really
hold a
enjoy that stuff.
prescription. I hold a subscription to BritBox.
That's completely different than holding a prescription.
Yeah, I meant to say subscription. I subscribe to BritBox, and I only
Yeah.
subscribe to it for all of the
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Black Adder.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
watched
yeah,
all
yeah.
of Black Adder on there. If you ever never watched Black Adder, that is
very funny.
the start of Rowan Atkinson and Hugh Laurie.
I think Rowan Atkinson is funnier than he is in Mr. Bean.
Yeah, which a lot of people would never associate
Hugh Laurie.
Hugh Laurie
Yeah.
with Rowan Atkinson, but
Yeah.
he did some Blackadder stuff. But another really good one is what was it called? It was Stephen Fry and Hugh Laurie's show. I can't remember what the name of that is.
That was another
But that's another
sketch comedy
funny,
show, right?
funny shit. Yeah, it's super funny. A lot of that humor, which a lot of people don't know how much of that old British humor could be credited to. Like a lot of comedians will credit a lot of that stuff to, especially in the world of irreverent comedy.
Sure.
A lot of that stuff goes to a lot of those early British guys like the Monty Pythons
Yeah.
and all the skits and stuff. The
Well,
the sketch comedy coming out of England.
This
was
show back, like I
gold.
said, has David Mitchell, but it's also got Robert Webb, who was the other guy in Peep Show. If you've never watched Peep Show,
Peep
it's a really
Show's good,
good
too.
It's a really good sketch
The
show.
IT Crowd is a
IT Crowd's
good
great.
one too. That's
Yeah.
not a sketch show, but that one's pretty funny.
Well, that's the meme you get of the guy just jumping out the window when he's tired of the meeting.
Yeah. Any of that stuff really is good. But Keeping Up with Appearances, Faulty Towers.
Faulty
if y'all
Towers.
just like
Do you know
comedy
they're
in
rebooting
general,
Faulty Towers?
I did not know that. I that right there will be a stretch
Well,
to be able to be funny
It's
again.
John
'cause it
Cleese.
just
It's John Cleese rebooting it.
oh, so he's coming back
I don't know if he's coming back as
as
Basil,
Faulty as Basil.
but with him behind it, I'm more apt to watch it.
I'm more apt to watch it with him behind it too. And if he reprises his role as Basil, that would be
I
just
think it would be great.
It
I
would
don't
be
know
great.
if I don't know if the little guy still is alive or not.
oh, the little Spanish guy.
Yeah.
And that's the funny thing too. And that's what like as a little kid
You couldn't do
growing
half of
up,
that shit
you
today,
couldn't do
though.
half of that
No.
at all. But as a little kid growing up in Texas, rewatching all these shows with my mom, because my mom would watch a lot of PBS, because
Yeah.
a lot of the British shows were on PBS, and I remember watching it, and it was so relatable because I lived in Texas, and you have Spanish speakers in Texas,
Sure.
but it was a literal Spanish guy from Spain, and it was just so good. It was a really really good show.
He's just so funny. Mason, you ever watch Faulty Towers?
No.
Okay. You really should. You should try it.
Remind me, and I'll give you my login to BritBox.
Since you like these kind of cartoons, I think you would like that. It's
Oh,
just
you would
real.
love it.
It's real life cartoon is all it is.
I think you would
really.
love it. It's like Pink
Yeah.
Panther.
Very
It's,
funny
it's
stuff.
hilarious.
All right, so we got off track here, Mason. Where are we? We just did Wives, and then we ended up with BritBox.
Well, we kind of covered it. Story structure and episode structure, and
Okay, so this is final vote.
I mean, it was kind of clear from when we started.
Sure.
King of the Hill.
Well, it is a
Overtake
King of the Hill
King of the Hill.
podcast, but I can think.
Well, actually, we can talk about one thing.
Yeah.
Even though it's a weird, because King of the Hills of all the more famous animated comedies. I mean, American Dad only has 2 kids, but all the others typically have 3 kids.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, that's true.
But King of the Hills is the only one I can think of where it's just Bobby.
Okay,
So, do you like in terms of like characters, can you really compare? You can't really compare Bobby to anybody. Chris
No.
and Meg and Stewie are very different from him.
yeah, very much so.
Mm-hmm.
That is where the shows differ quite a bit in those kid characters or the family characters and things, because Hank's family is so large. When you start including Luann and then later Lucky and all those people that are in his life,
Yeah.
he's got a big. And I honestly I include his neighbors, which I don't in Family Guy. Family Guy is just these guys you get together with at the bar. Hank is with these other 3 guys all the time. I mean, constantly.
So much he thought about taking them to a romantic restaurant.
That's
Yeah,
exactly what I was
yeah.
going to say. Yeah, last episode he was going to take them to the spaghetti restaurant. So I think it's clear that my vote is for Family Guy. What about you, Rustin?
I'm gonna say King of the Hill. I have to vote.
I
for
mean,
King
I'm
of the
sorry.
Hill.
I mean,
You meant King of the
I
Hill
meant
as well.
King of the Hill. And I said
So
Family Guy, yeah.
we're 3-0
to
unanimous.
scare
I'm sure
anyone.
King of the Hill, right,
Yeah.
Mason?
I mean, Family Guy has
Yeah.
a lot of its good parts, and again, this is just all subjective.
So
I mean, King of the Hill is more serious.
Yeah.
Family Guy can be more fun to watch.
sure.
But also it can also not be like it's a lot. Sometimes it's
I
a lot
feel like-
bloodier, a lot more violent.
I feel like
and
if you
sometimes
sit
it's
down and watch Family
also
Guy,
a lot meaner.
yeah, I feel like if you sit down and watch Family Guy, you could watch 10 minutes of it and it doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter at
with
all.
King of the Hill, you kind of have to know the continuity, the story, that sort of thing. You have to know the characters a lot more.
The beginning of the episode affects the end of the episode.
Yeah, to watch Peter Griffin fight a big chicken, you don't really need to know.
I mean
anything.
that's always funny.
Yeah, but you don't need to know anything.
Yeah.
Going in. So yeah, we all voted for King of the Hill. Surprise, surprise. Next week, I would like to do Bob's Burgers.
Please tell me you've watched enough of that, Rusty.
I have watched enough of Bob Burgers.
Is that because
Huge
that's actually
my
that's
family.
because that's like the closest comparison to these two.
Yep.
'Cause both
Yeah,
are
Bob's
really
Burgers
good.
and the reason why I like Bob's Burgers so much, I'm not going to try to go too far into this
Yeah,
one,
don't.
is Squiggle Vision. That's why I like Bob's Burgers. And if you know anything about what Squiggle Vision was, you'll know why I like Bob's Burgers.
All right, so we'll get into that next week. And the reason I bring that one up is I've thought seriously about doing a Bob's Burgers podcast, kind of in the style that we do King of the Hill.
Well, call me.
Maybe a little differently because I don't know that we want to print out scripts every week, but
they're there. I've seen them.
Yeah,
They
I've seen them too.
Well,
you guys,
that's one you have to eat food with. You
That's-
can't not eat food and watch
that's
that.
true.
I think with that
A lot of
one,
chewing.
I think that one, we might actually have to have a cooking element to that where we make a sandwich each
Oh, that'd be cool.
episode.
That'd be cool.
We try to, because there's Bob Burger recipe books.
Oh, really?
So I feel like
We
if we
should-
did
a lot
something
of
like that, we
YouTubers
would
have
have to
them.
make the sandwich with each episode.
Say
or
it again,
something.
Mason.
A lot of YouTubers go and make recipes from the show, and you realize, well, damn, Bob actually puts a lot of work into this.
I
Yeah,
love
he really
the
does.
names of the burgers that are up on the chalkboard that never really get referenced. Just
Yeah,
every once
just,
in a while.
Just every once in a while, you see it up there. Yeah.
If looks could kale.
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask our audience, if you're listening and you're listening to this, would you partake in a Bob's Burgers
Yeah. Would you want
podcast? It'd probably be once a week.
Something else.
I don't think we do that one twice a week. But
Well,
or
we
if you
didn't
want
need
to just
twice a week
tell
for that
us which show of
And
King of the Hill or
then
Family
it
Guy
might
which
lead
you-
into doing other anime
Yeah,
shows.
that's true.
There's the guys in Australia that do the King of the Hill podcast.
Yeah.
They started off doing The Simpsons, and then they're adding different shows to their little network of shows that they have
Sure.
as they go along. So yeah, that'd be cool.
I think that might be fun.
I like
Bob's,
Bob's
Burgers seems like it would be a good one
There's
to
like
start with.
What 12 seasons of that? Almost
12, 15, something
yeah.
like that. Yeah,
Honestly, that one can be a multi-parter because they are so similar.
they really
Yeah,
are.
for sure.
They really are. All right, so we'll do that comparison next week. Again, if you're listening, give us a vote. Like Mason said, if it's not that one, tell us which other ones you want us to compare to.
Or just tell us which show you like more.
Yeah, that's true too. We should probably put out a poll of some kind somewhere. So look for that on our social media.
Yeah,
we'll put out
look for a poll. We'll put a poll out on that.
and we'll ask you for which show you want us to do next.
yeah,
week.
for input and stuff like that.
All right, that's it. The first annual Tournament of Cartoon Champions, episode 1, is done. And we'll move on to the second one next Friday.
Not Matanya. You can find us at bwaakoth.com, or you could go to roguemedianetwork.com/bwaakoth. And if you would like to support us, you could go to patreon.com/bwaakoth and
It's only $3 a month.
click the $3 option to help
easy.
support us. We
Easy
appreciate
stuff.
you.
All right, Mason, what do we say at the end of these shows?
I forget.
You do not. Come on.
I don't want to do it.
Okay.
Oui, Matanya.
Oui, Matanya, indeed. And for Mason, oui, Matanya.
Oui, Matanya.
They gave it 1 star.
This has been a Rogue Media Network production.